Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. Honorable Foreign Minister, the Chairperson, Chief Executive, Management and Staff of Norfund, the Honorable Members of Parliament, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start first by extending warm felicitations from the President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency, the President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, and to congratulate you on your 20th anniversary celebrations. For us in Ghana, there is an additional reason why we are pleased about this celebration. It coincides with the opening of Norfund's newest Africa Regional Office in our country as an entry point into West Africa. This, we believe, is a clear reflection of the confidence that Norfund has in our dear country. 20 years in the life of any organization is worth celebrating, and particularly for an organization such as Norfund that has contributed significantly to the economic fortunes of several developing countries. As it is often said, it is not so much the number of years of existence that matters, but the substance and the quality of what has gone on in those years. The focus of my remarks, similar to what my colleague did, will be on the role of the private sector in promoting growth and poverty reduction. I believe that the most critical development challenge confronting us in Africa is dealing with poverty and the associated problem of unemployment. The development experience of most of the matured economies in the world point clearly to the central role that has been played by the private sector in stimulating growth and creating wealth. 30 years ago, China could be described as a poor country. Now, it took the dynamism of one of its greatest leaders in recognizing the power of private enterprise to transform the once sleeping giant into an all-conquering global force. In spite of this overwhelming evidence from development history, there are still many of us in government who still believe that the private sector is indeed a competitor to government, or simply we just play lip service to the role that the private sector can play. Thankfully, there's a new wind of change blowing in Africa. There's a growing realization that the only sustainable way of dealing with unemployment and by extension poverty is to support the private sector to create jobs. In Ghana, for example, the public sector employs only about 650,000 people out of a potential labor force of 12 million. To make this even more alarming, 150,000 new school graduates come out every year to join the labor force. It is against this background that our government has put the private sector at the center of its development agenda. The challenges confronting the private sector in West Africa are no different from those that confront the rest of Africa and indeed other parts of the world. They include, among others, a poor enabling environment for enterprise development, lack of access to medium and long-term financing, and in some cases, the high cost of capital, poor infrastructure and logistics services, lack of skilled manpower, and limited access to technology, research, and development. To respond to these challenges, the government of Ghana has embarked on a very ambitious agenda for economic reform and industrial transformation. First, we have sought to deal aggressively with the fundamentals for stabilizing the macroeconomic environment, without which the private sector cannot grow. This includes controlling inflation and interest rates, introducing fiscal discipline by removing public expenditure where it is not necessary. It also involves undertaking significant measures to control domestic debt so that the private sector is not crowded out of the financial sector, as well as reducing our foreign debt commitments to sustainable limits. We are also strengthening the private sector by shifting our economic policy focus away from taxation to incentivizing production. In this regard, the government at the beginning of the year announced tax cuts affecting 10 different taxes, which amount to over $250 million US. These are all reforms that are designed to make Ghana the most business-friendly nation in Africa. Distinguished invited guests, we believe that whilst macroeconomic stability may be a necessary condition, it is indeed not a sufficient condition for growth, job creation, and poverty reduction. Therefore, in addition to these policy measures that have been addressed, the government has also launched an ambitious industrial transformation program that is anchored on 10 pillars. Our vision, as our traffic warden so eloquently put it, is to make Ghana a manufacturing hub by developing a modern, vibrant, technology-driven, and competitive private sector that will contribute to inclusive growth and also create jobs, particularly for vulnerable groups, including women and the youth. The first pillar of this transformation agenda is to facilitate access to finance for industrial development. In this regard, we have established a $200 million stimulus fund to revitalize existing companies that are currently distressed but are deemed to be commercially viable. We are also promoting the establishment of a $2 billion industrial development fund under a public-private arrangement in support of the development of new strategic anchor industrial initiatives. So this is probably an entry point for Norfund going forward to support the industrial development in Ghana. The second pillar is what we've branded as the One District, One Factory initiative, which seeks to establish at least one medium to large-scale industrial enterprise in each of the 216 districts in Ghana, based on their natural resource endowment and their comparative advantage. This initiative is private sector-led, but actively supported by government. It is designed to revitalize our rural communities and also to create massive job opportunities. In addition, it will promote import substitution, export development, and also enhance our foreign exchange revenue. It is anticipated that most of these district enterprises will actually be agro-based enterprises. The third pillar is the establishment of new strategic anchor industries in partnership with the private sector. This is important because for over a century, Ghana has depended almost exclusively on cocoa and gold. As in many other African countries, there's the need for economic diversification. So this pillar seeks to introduce new growth pillars for Ghana, and this includes the following: the petrochemical industry, an integrated bauxite and aluminum industry, iron and steel, automotive parts and component assembly, industrial chemicals, pharmaceuticals, garments, and textiles. The fourth pillar in this agenda is the establishment of industrial parks and special economic zones. This will be done in each of the 10 regions of Ghana. This will address one of the critical challenges confronting the private sector by providing access to service land utilities, energy, reliable energy, and common user facilities and services. Because of the limited time, the other pillars of our transformation agenda is to promote small and medium enterprises in different sectors, particularly those that have high growth potential. The next one is to establish an industrial subcontracting exchange, which will link small and medium enterprises into the supply chain of large companies. We are also promoting the exports of value-added goods, targeting the continental market, the US market, and then Europe. And then last but not the least, we are seeking to improve the business environment through comprehensive regulatory reform to reduce the cost of doing business. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we recognize that this is an ambitious program, but it is often the result of careful long-term planning and execution that will make success a reality. This is what we are seeking to do in Ghana, and I believe this is what other parts of West Africa and Africa as a whole are interested in doing. Development aid has served us well over the years, but we are looking at Ghana beyond aid, and this explains why we are focusing on trade and investment. We believe that there's a significant opportunity for us to work with Norway, with Norfund, to be able to move this agenda forward. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me end by once again congratulating Norfund for a well-deserved celebration. I thank you for your attention.
If I could ask you